In our family, there was one unbreakable rule. You don't touch the brother's wife. It was a silent law, a foundation that held everything together. But foundations crack, right? My husband, Lucas, left the space for Mateus to walk right into. He gave me comfort, attention, a feeling I hadn't known in years. I didn't want to fall for him. I fought it. But when I realized the only time I felt truly alive was when Lucas's brother was in the room, I knew I was already lost. And the cost of that single feeling would be everything. Livia always believed marriage was meant to be a sanctuary, a place where two people truly saw each other. But lately, her 8 years with Lucas had become a beautiful house with empty rooms. Lucas wasn't cruel, he was simply absent, consumed by his work and the endless glow of his phone. She missed the simple, small gestures, a playful whisper, a touch on her back, any sign that she was still desired. If you think that was the worst of it, you haven't seen the half. Grab a seat, subscribe the channel, and let me tell you the story of how a single secret destroyed everything, starting right now. In our family, there was one unbreakable rule. You don't touch the brother's wife. It was a silent law, a foundation that held everything together. But foundations crack, right? My husband, Lucas, left the space for Mateus to walk right into. He gave me comfort, attention, a feeling I hadn't known in years. I didn't want to fall for him. I fought it. But when I realized the only time I felt truly alive was when Lucas's brother was in the room, I knew I was already lost. And the cost of that single feeling would be everything. Livia always believed marriage was meant to be a sanctuary, a place where two people truly saw each other. But lately, her 8 years with Lucas had become a beautiful house with empty rooms. Lucas wasn't cruel. He was simply absent, consumed by his work and the endless glow of his phone. She missed the simple, small gestures, a playful whisper, a touch on her back, any sign that she was still desired. If you think that was the worst of it, you haven't seen the half. Grab a seat, subscribe the channel, and let me tell you the story of how a single secret destroyed everything, starting right now. The truth was, Lucas's constant distraction had created a void in their home and in their family. Lucas would glance at his wife, but Mateus would actually look at her. Mateus's eyes were always attentive, catching her expression over dinner, noticing when she changed her hair. He was polite, professional, and entirely too present. His presence in the house was supposed to be a temporary solution for him, but for Livia it quickly became a dangerous comfort, an illicit source of validation. One rainy Tuesday, Livia was struggling to carry a heavy box up the stairs. Lucas, working late in his office, barely looked up, just offering a distracted, "Be careful." But Mateus was there instantly, taking the box from her hands. Their fingers brushed, and the shock that went through Livia's hand sent a tremor through her entire body. It was a fleeting touch, yet it was the most attention she had received in months. She immediately rationalized it. He's family. He's just helping. But her heart was pounding, and she knew he felt it too. Mateus simply held her gaze for a second too long, his eyes asking a silent question she wasn't ready to answer. That night, she stood in front of the mirror, reapplying lip gloss, not for her husband, who was still texting, but for the memory of Mateus's hand. The marriage was cracking, and Livia felt a crushing guilt for finding her sense of worth in her own brother-in-law. She knew she had to keep her distance, to respect the sanctity of her vow and the sanctity of the family's rule. But as she watched Lucas dismissively wave her goodnight before returning to his emails, a single, toxic thought took root. Lucas had already broken their sanctuary. Mateus was simply showing her the exit. Mateus's temporary stay had stretched into 6 weeks.
And the convenience had become a constant, grinding tension for Livia. Lucas rarely noticed his brother's presence, often sending a quick text from his home office instead of joining them for dinner. This left Livia and Matthias alone almost every evening, sharing the silence of a house that felt too large for two. They spoke mostly of trivial things, the weather, a book, the news, yet every simple conversation felt like walking a tightrope. Matthias didn't just listen, he absorbed. He asked about her day, about her art projects, about the dreams she had quietly abandoned years ago. This was the exact kind of attention Livia craved, the kind that Lucas had stopped giving her long ago. She found herself subconsciously saving her stories and observations just to share them with him, a secret emotional currency they traded every night. It felt wrong, but it also felt like oxygen. The living room, once a shared family space, now felt like a stage set for their escalating chemistry. One night, while they were watching a film, Matthias shifted on the sofa. He didn't move closer to her, but the simple act of adjusting his posture made Livia's heart race wildly. She realized, with a jolt of panic, that she was acutely aware of the exact distance between his arm and hers. The air between them was so thick, you could practically taste the danger. That same week, Matthias extended a casual invitation for them to cook dinner together. "Just us," he suggested, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, making the phrase sound like a private, loaded secret. She knew she should decline, should invent an excuse to maintain distance, but the thought of spending 2 hours focusing on a task with him was too tempting. She hesitated, her refusal dying in her throat. She agreed, and the moment Lucas texted to say he'd be working late, a surge of guilt and excitement washed over her. It wasn't just cooking, it was a deliberate act of choosing proximity. When Lucas finally came downstairs, Livia simply told him, "Matthias and I made a quick dinner," avoiding his eyes. The ease with which the lie slipped out was a chilling sign of how quickly she was adapting to their secret. As they finished the dishes, Matthias paused and looked at her, his expression serious. "Lucas is lucky to have you, Livia," he said, the compliment feeling heavy, almost possessive. Livia's blood ran cold. It wasn't the compliment that shocked her, but the distinct feeling that Matthias wasn't warning her. He was warning himself, and she was caught right in the middle.
Cooking with Matthias was worse and better than Livia had imagined. The small, confined space of the kitchen amplified the electric tension between them. Every time one reached for a spice or turned to stir a pot, their proximity was inescapable. It wasn't just his physical nearness, it was the way they moved together, anticipating each other's needs, a silent, flawless choreography that her marriage had long since forgotten. Midway through chopping vegetables, Matthias reached past her for the salt. His arm didn't just pass by, his forearm lingered against the bare skin of her shoulder for a long, deliberate second. Livia's breath hitched. It was a clear, intentional trespass, yet done under the pretense of a normal task. He pulled away slowly, but the heat from his skin remained, a burning brand on her shoulder that gelled her blood and sent her pulse skyrocketing. Matthias didn't apologize, and Livia didn't acknowledge the touch. They continued to chop and stir in a sudden, heavy silence. That silence was their unspoken agreement, a confirmation that they both knew what was happening, and neither was stopping it. Livia realized that the true danger wasn't Lucas finding out. It was the reckless thrill she got from sharing this secret with his own brother. Later, as they ate, Matthias casually mentioned how lonely the house must feel when Lucas was traveling. His voice was soft, laced with understanding. Livia felt a dangerous pull to confess everything, the resentment, the longing, the deep, yawning sense of abandonment. She saw the empathy in his eyes, but she also recognized a shrewd, calculated approach. He was exposing her vulnerability not to heal her, but to exploit it. She caught herself studying Matthias's hands.
strong, warm, and confident, the polar opposite of Lucas's hands, which were always tapping away at a keyboard. Livia knew that if she didn't leave the room right then, she would say or do something she could never take back. She needed the physical space to regain her self-control, but a deeper part of her, the part that was starving for validation, silently begged her to stay. Livia abruptly stood up, mumbling an excuse about being tired. Mateus didn't try to stop her. He just smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that chilled her to the core. She walked away feeling less in control of herself than she had in years. She had managed to resist Mateus, but she couldn't escape the devastating truth. Her control had been replaced by a quiet, consuming hunger. As I got into bed, I realized I wasn't afraid of what Mateus wanted. I was terrified of how much I wanted him to take it. The following days were a torment of forced normality. Livia tried to throw herself back into her routine, hoping to burn off the reckless energy Mateus had ignited. But now, every little habit of Lucas felt like an active offense. The loud, abrupt closing of his laptop, the casual way he reached for his phone before kissing her hello, it all magnified the profound loneliness she felt, a deep ache Mateus seemed uniquely positioned to soothe. Mateus, sensing her withdrawal, gave her space, but fate intervened. A sudden, massive thunderstorm knocked out the power late one evening. Lucas, predictably, was lost in a conference call on his backup line, oblivious. Livia was left to fumble for candles in the dark, and suddenly, Mateus was there. His hand landed on the small of her back, guiding her gently through the pitch-black hallway, his presence a warm, grounding force. They ended up sitting on the porch swing, illuminated only by the flicker of a single candle. The sound of the torrential rain created a cocoon of privacy around them. It was here, in the darkness, that Livia finally broke. She didn't talk about Mateus, but about Lucas. She confessed the empty rooms, the feeling of being invisible, the years of subtle neglect that felt worse than any outright cruelty. Mateus didn't interrupt her or offer simple platitudes. He just listened, his silence heavy with understanding. When she finished, he turned to face her, the candlelight catching the intensity in his eyes. "Livia," he said, his voice low and firm, "you are the most beautiful, vibrant woman I know. You deserve to be seen." His words weren't a compliment, they felt like a declaration of war against her marriage. Livia felt a wave of dizzying relief and profound guilt. His admission was the emotional line she had been waiting for, and she realized she had deliberately provoked it. She reached out, placing her hand briefly over his, a purely platonic gesture that felt like the most loaded, dangerous act of her life. It was a thank you, an apology, and a desperate plea all wrapped into one shared touch. Mateus gripped her hand, his thumbs stroking the back of her skin in a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. The small, familiar gesture sent a powerful, undeniable jolt through her. She felt for the first time truly alive and fully desired. But as the candle flickered, Livia saw not passion, but reckless ambition in his eyes, and a terrifying thought struck her. Mateus was enjoying this danger far more than she was.
The next morning, the power was back on, and so was the awkward silence. Livia kept her distance, desperately trying to rewind the emotional clock, but the memory of Mateus's hand on hers was a constant, warm weight. Lucas, still oblivious, left early for a business trip, granting Livia a temporary reprieve, or perhaps a fatal opportunity. That afternoon, Livia found a small wrapped box on her dresser, bearing a simple note from Mateus. "For the vibrant woman you are." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, beautifully crafted. It was a thoughtful, expensive gift that crossed every known boundary of appropriate in-law behavior. It was entirely unnecessary and profoundly dangerous. Mateus hadn't bought a gift for his sister-in-law. He had bought a gift for the woman he was courting. Livia stared at the silver, realizing its true value wasn't monetary, but symbolic. It was a secret chain linking them. She knew she should have refused it, placed it back on the dresser, and confronted him. Instead, she slipped it onto her wrist, the cool metal feeling like a badge of rebellion. Later that evening, Lucas called, excited about a business deal. In his usual distracted way, he mentioned, "Mateus needed some extra cash for a gift today. Hope he found something nice for his new client." Livia's blood ran cold. Mateus hadn't been buying a gift for her. He had been buying a gift for a client and had just used the excuse to give it to her secretly, making her feel even more complicit in the deception. Mateus had intentionally manufactured a believable lie for Lucas, knowing Livia would accept the gift under the pretense of secrecy. She felt a flash of anger at his manipulation, but it was quickly overshadowed by the intoxicating feeling of being part of a shared conspiracy. She told Lucas nothing, her silence solidifying the bond with Mateus more than any conversation ever could. That night, Livia had dinner with Mateus again. The silver bracelet was hidden under her sleeve, a burning secret against her skin. He didn't mention the gift, only raised an eyebrow slightly, a silent question she answered by keeping the bracelet hidden. They were beyond words now. They were trading in complicity and unspoken desires. "I thought the bracelet was just a gift, but it was a test." And the moment Mateus saw my answer, his expression turned dark, showing me the dangerous path he truly intended to walk. The day after the dinner, the bracelet felt heavy on Livia's wrist, a constant, sharp reminder of her secret alliance with Mateus. Livia tried to pretend it didn't exist, but every time she moved her hand, the cool, forbidden metal brushed her skin, confirming her complicity. Lucas was due back the following day, and Livia felt an urgent need to distance herself, to create a believable wall of normalcy before her husband returned to their empty rooms. She spent the entire day avoiding Mateus, hiding in the garden, working furiously on a forgotten painting. But even the solitude offered no peace. Her mind was a battlefield of guilt and yearning. She knew the moment Lucas walked through the door, this temporary, reckless spell would break, and she'd be back to being the invisible wife. Yet a dangerous part of her hoped Mateus would fight to keep the spell alive. Late that night, long after she was in bed, a soft vibration rattled her phone. It was an unfamiliar number. Livia's heart leapt to her throat. She knew instantly who it was. The message was simple. "I saw the silver. I knew you would keep it." Mateus had broken the final communication boundary, moving their secret from shared looks and accidental touches to documented evidence. Livia scrambled out of bed, her hands shaking as she read the text again. It wasn't just about the bracelet. It was about the confidence of his statement. He knew her. He had understood her deep, desperate need to feel desired enough to risk accepting a forbidden gift. He wasn't just a temptation. He was a mirror reflecting her deepest shame and longing. A second text arrived almost immediately. Just one single question. "Are you asleep?" The words were innocent, yet the context made them a blatant and reckless invitation. Livia gripped the phone, her mind racing. This was the moment of decision. Answering it meant surrendering control. Ignoring it meant admitting she was a coward. The entire future of her marriage hung on the silence between those two short messages. Livia stared at the screen, tears blurring the words. The desire to respond, to finally tell him how seen he made her feel,
was overwhelming. But the image of Lucas, her husband, the father of her potential children, flashed through her mind. She threw the phone on the bed, physically forcing herself away from the temptation. She thought she was safe, but the damage was already done.
Lucas arrived home mid-morning, loud and cheerful, oblivious to the emotional bomb that had exploded in his absence. He hugged Livia tightly, a gesture that felt more like a performance than genuine affection. Livia forced a bright smile, instantly donning the mask of the content wife. Her mind was racing, deleting the texts from Matthias and hiding the bracelet deep in her jewelry box. Matthias appeared moments later, offering Lucas a casual greeting. When his eyes met Livia's, they were unreadable, but she sensed a subtle, possessive triumph beneath his neutral expression. He knew what had transpired the night before, and he knew she had deleted the evidence. This shared, unspoken secret created a powerful, invisible cord that pulled Livia towards him, right in front of her husband. Later, as Livia was folding laundry, she picked up a shirt Matthias had left in the dryer. A faint, clean scent of cologne and wood wafted up from the fabric. It was a masculine, distinct smell, a smell she had grown intimately familiar with over the last 6 weeks. Livia dropped the shirt instantly, feeling a sudden wave of panic. That scent was a physical manifestation of her secret, a betrayal that could be smelled. That evening, Lucas picked up the same shirt, intending to pass it back to his brother. He sniffed it casually. "Matthias got a new cologne, huh? Smells expensive." Livia's blood ran cold. Lucas didn't sound suspicious, just observant, but the simple comment felt like a direct accusation. The fear was paralyzing. The scent had crossed the final boundary, entering Lucas's sphere of awareness. Livia forced a weak laugh. "I think he's trying to impress a new client, like you said." She knew she had to get rid of the shirt, to eliminate this dangerous scented evidence. She offered to do Matthias's laundry immediately, an over-the-top gesture that thankfully went unnoticed. But the realization was clear. The truth wasn't just in her heart, it was tangible and traceable. As she lay in bed beside Lucas that night, Livia felt a confusing mix of relief and crushing disappointment. She was relieved the secret wasn't out, but deeply disappointed that the distance was back. The quiet, empty room was suffocating after the reckless intensity she had shared with Matthias. Livia knew she couldn't continue living this double life for much longer. The house was too small for all three of them now. Lucas was back, but his presence only highlighted the gulf of silence between him and Livia. The tension between Livia and Matthias was so thick it felt like a third person sitting at the dinner table. They avoided eye contact, speaking only in carefully measured pleasantries, but every move was a silent declaration of their forbidden history. 2 days after Lucas's return, Livia went to the garage to fetch a tool. The door was half open, casting a long, dim rectangle of light. She was alone, or so she thought. Matthias emerged from the shadows near the workbench, startling her. His expression was serious, his easy smile entirely gone. He had waited for her, creating a calculated opportunity for privacy. Matthias immediately cornered her, not physically, but with his words. "You didn't answer my text, Livia. You think you can go back to normal now?" His voice was low, laced with a mix of hurt and challenge. Livia felt a rush of adrenaline. He wasn't giving her a chance to backtrack. He was forcing the issue, pushing her to acknowledge the truth of their connection. Livia tried to maintain control. "That text crossed a line, Matthias. You know the rules." Matthias took a single step closer, closing the distance between them. He whispered, his eyes locked on hers, "The only rule I care about is that you are unhappy, and I can fix that." He reached out, not to touch her, but to gently brush the silver bracelet under her sleeve. "You kept this. You can't lie to me about what you want." His touch was the final, devastating blow to Livia's self-control. She felt her body arch instinctively towards him, betraying her desperate need to surrender. She hated him for knowing her so well, for using her deepest emotional need of leverage. But she also hated Lucas for leaving her so empty in the first place. The fight wasn't between them. It was Livia versus her own longing. Just as Livia was about to speak, a voice echoed down the hallway. "Livia, Mateus, what are you guys doing in the dark?" It was Lucas, his tone casual and slightly annoyed. They pulled apart instantly, their faces masks of panic. Mateus didn't move away. Instead, he made a quick, calculated decision that completely protected Livia and at the same time trapped her further. Mateus looked at me, a flash of something cold in his eyes, and then he said something to Lucas that completely changed the dynamic, and that sealed my fate. Mateus didn't hesitate. As Lucas's voice grew louder from the hallway, Mateus casually picked up a loose wrench from the workbench. "We're trying to figure out this awful squeak in the garage door, Lucas," he called out smoothly, his voice entirely neutral. "Livia just happened to be passing by." Livia's breath caught. He hadn't just protected her, he had given them a perfectly mundane alibi, instantly diffusing Lucas's casual suspicion. Lucas walked in, looking mildly annoyed. "That squeak is driving me crazy. Just spray some WD-40 on it tomorrow, Mateus." He glanced at Livia. "You don't need to be down here, sweetie. You know you hate the garage." Livia forced a nod, utterly unable to speak. Mateus had played the role of the helpful platonic brother-in-law flawlessly, and Lucas bought it hook, line, and sinker. Livia realized, with a chill that froze her blood, that Mateus had just shown her how far he was willing to go and how easily he could manipulate the situation. He wasn't just attracted to her, he was strategic and cold. He had sacrificed a moment of potential passion to secure their long-term secrecy, and more importantly, to demonstrate his control over the narrative. As Lucas left, Mateus returned the wrench to its place. He turned to Livia, his expression changing from casual ease to sharp intensity. "You're safe," he murmured, his eyes locking on hers. "For now." His tone was not reassuring, it was a silent promise of a higher price later. Livia knew she should run, but his control felt strangely intoxicating. She finally found her voice, a harsh whisper. "Why are you doing this, Mateus? This will destroy everything." Mateus took a small step back, his smile returning, but this time it was predatory. "Because I saw your eyes in the dark, Livia, and you're tired of being the invisible wife. I'm just giving you what Lucas is refusing to." Livia fled the garage, leaving the scent of gasoline and reckless danger behind her. She knew Mateus's calculated move had not saved her marriage, it had merely confirmed her status as his possession in their shared secret. The line hadn't just been crossed, it had been erased by a lie. The next few days were excruciating. Lucas was oblivious, Mateus was everywhere, and Livia felt she was constantly holding her breath. She kept the silver bracelet hidden under the cuff of her shirt, but sometimes, when she reached for a glass or tied her hair back, she saw Mateus's gaze flick down to her wrist with deliberate slowness. That silent acknowledgement was more intimate than any touch. Livia found herself searching Mateus's eyes for answers, looking for the guilt, the fear, the recklessness, anything to confirm he was as terrified as she was, but all she saw was a calm, unflappable determination. He was waiting for her to make the next move, secure in the knowledge that she was too emotionally starved to resist him forever. The opportunity came unexpectedly when Lucas's mother, a sweet, old-fashioned woman, came to visit. While showing off a new piece of jewelry, Livia, by accident, pulled her sleeve back too far. The forbidden silver flashed briefly in the light. Livia panicked, quickly tugging the cuff down, but it was too late. Lucas's mother, seated across the table, noticed it immediately. "Oh, Livia, that's beautiful! Where did Lucas find that delicate piece?" The simple question gelled Livia's blood. She opened her mouth to form a lie, her mind scrambling for a believable source, knowing the truth would ignite a catastrophic fire.
Before Livia could speak, Mateos, sitting next to her, leaned forward to show his mother a photo on his phone. "It's gorgeous, Mom, but look at this picture of the new sailboat I'm financing." The distraction was swift and flawless. He changed the subject so completely that Lucas's mother forgot the question entirely. Livia stared at him, unable to breathe. He had just confirmed her secret to his own mother without saying a word, then protected her from the immediate fallout. He looked at Livia and gave a subtle, possessive nod. Mateos had just shown her that their secret was not just between them, but was something he actively managed. The lie became heavier than the truth ever could be. Livia realized that Mateos wasn't just tempting her. He was actively dismantling her marriage from the inside, piece by piece. She hadn't made a choice yet, but his strategic moves were making the choice for her.
The next encounter was inevitable and deeply unsettling. Livia found Mateus alone in the laundry room, fixing a leaky faucet. His hands were busy, but his eyes were entirely focused on her. She knew this was her chance to end it, to use the fear from the previous night to create a boundary. She walked in, and her voice was firm, though shaking slightly. "Mateus, you have to leave, now, before this goes any further." Her words were a desperate plea for control, a final attempt to honor her vows to Lucas and the family. She meant every syllable of it. Mateus slowly straightened up, the wrench still in his hand. He looked at her, and his eyes weren't challenging, but deeply hurt. "You want me to leave, Livia? Or do you want me to leave you?" The question was a devastating psychological blow, twisting her words and exposing her true, raw conflict. Livia's resolve crumbled. She didn't want him to leave her. She wanted the feeling he gave her instead. She wanted the attention, the validation, the spark. She looked away, biting her lip to stop the rush of tears. "Please, just go," she whispered, her voice cracking. Mateus took a single step closer, placing the wrench on the counter, the clanging sound echoing the breakage of her will. He didn't touch her, but his proximity was a physical force. "I hear you, Livia. I hear that you're scared, but I don't hear a lie." She didn't move away. She stood there, frozen, her body betraying her mind's command. Mateus had expertly heard the desire beneath the fear, and he acknowledged only the desire. His refusal to leave was the confirmation that he was not only listening to her words, but to the silent language of her heart. Livia knew that every second she stood there was a direct act of betrayal against Lucas, yet she couldn't move. She was a deer caught in the headlights of her own destructive longing, mesmerized by the man who had just dismantled her entire moral compass with 2 simple sentences. The tension finally forced Livia to take action, but not against Mateus. She turned her focus to the origin of her pain, Lucas. She needed to know if she was destroying her marriage over a feeling, or if there was something deeper, something that justified her transgression. She began searching for any sign that Lucas was having an affair, hoping to find a clear moral reason to leave. Her search was fruitless, until she found a loose panel in the back of Lucas's large antique mahogany desk. It was almost invisible, hidden behind a stack of papers. With trembling hands, Livia managed to pry it open, revealing a small, secret compartment she never knew existed. Inside, there was no lipstick-stained letter or a condom wrapper. Instead, she found a stack of official-looking bank statements and a handful of small velvet pouches. Her hand shook as she pulled out the top document. It wasn't about another woman. It was about money. The statements detailed large, irregular cash withdrawals, sums that made her stomach drop. These weren't business expenses. These were payments. Her confusion turned to sheer terror as she opened one of the velvet pouches and found a piece of exquisite antique jewelry she had never seen before, and certainly never received. The necklace was beautiful, but felt cold and menacing in her palm. Why was Lucas hiding enormous sums of money and expensive jewelry in a secret compartment? This wasn't just a sign of a distracted husband. It was a sign of a husband leading a second hidden life. The emptiness in their marriage felt suddenly deliberate.
Livia's initial guilt about Mateus was instantly replaced by a blinding, righteous anger. She wasn't destroying the marriage. Lucas had already hollowed it out. The betrayal wasn't about love. It was about a dark financial secret that potentially endangered them both.
Livia couldn't process the discovery alone. Her instinct was to call Mateus, the man who had seen the cracks in her life and offered a dangerous comfort. That same evening, she waited until Lucas was asleep, then rushed out to the guest house, the bank statements and the velvet pouch clutched tightly in her hands. Mateus opened the door, his eyes widening slightly at her distraught expression and the items she carried. Livia didn't waste time with explanations. She spilled the contents onto the small table, the statements detailing the large, unexplained withdrawals and the antique necklace. "What is this, Mateus? What is Lucas doing?" she whispered, her voice raw with fear. Mateus didn't touch the necklace. He immediately focused on the bank statements, his expression turning grave and calculating. He spent a long, silent moment reading the fine print, his professionalism as sharp as a knife. His reaction confirmed Livia's deepest fear. This was not a simple misunderstanding. He looked up at her, and his eyes were cold. "Livia, this isn't about another woman. This is much, much worse. These withdrawals, they match a pattern I've seen before." His tone was flat, devoid of the soft intimacy he usually offered. He was no longer the charming tempter. He was a knowledgeable accomplice. "What pattern?" Livia demanded, her hands shaking. Mateus hesitated, his face a mask of conflict. "I can't tell you everything right now, but Lucas isn't just distracted by work, Livia. He's involved in something dangerous, something that could ruin both of your lives." Livia felt the world spin. The man she had almost betrayed her husband with was now the only man who knew the true, frightening extent of her husband's deceit. Mateus had known all along that the marriage was crumbling from a source far darker than simple neglect. Mateus stepped back, his posture stiff. "You need to put this away right now. Don't tell Lucas you found it. We have to be smart about this." Livia nodded, her fear overwhelming her ability to argue. She started gathering the papers, her mind paralyzed by the magnitude of Lucas's secret. As she reached for the velvet pouch, Mateus's hand covered hers. This time the touch was not a calculated seduction. It was a firm, protective grip. He looked at her, his eyes blazing with a mixture of urgency and something Livia couldn't quite name. Relief, perhaps, that she was finally fully dependent on him. "Livia," he whispered, his voice thick, "I've waited for you to see the truth. Not just about us, but about him." He didn't give her a chance to respond. He closed the remaining distance, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that was urgent, deep, and desperate. The kiss wasn't sweet or tentative. It was a consummation of their shared secret, a physical declaration of their forbidden alliance against Lucas. Livia responded instantly, years of frustration, neglect, and this new, blinding fear pouring out in her reaction. It was a kiss of betrayal and vengeance. They broke apart, both breathing heavily. Livia's mind screamed the word traitor, but her body felt an intoxicating rush of liberation. The line had been crossed, definitively and irrevocably, not for a fleeting lust, but for a shared conspiracy. Mateus pulled her close, his arms wrapping tightly around her. His words felt like a promise of protection, and simultaneously, the heavy chains of her surrender.
The next few weeks were a surreal dance of deception. Livia lived a dual existence, the supportive wife to Lucas and the secret accomplice to Mateus. They communicated in subtle head nods, carefully worded texts, and snatched moments of conversation in the garden. The intimacy forged by the shared danger was far more intense than any romantic passion. Mateus, using his knowledge of Lucas's business, began piecing together the financial puzzle. He found cryptic entries in Lucas's shared digital calendar, marked with seemingly random initials. One entry, "Meeting with AZ," stood out. Livia had always assumed AZ was a client. Mateus explained the terrifying reality. "AZ isn't a client, Livia. It's a code word.
Lucas isn't just making large withdrawals, he's laundering money for a very powerful, very dangerous group. Livia's blood ran cold. Her husband, the absent businessman, was a criminal. Livia looked at Mateus, seeing not a temptress, but a potential lifeline. "How do you know this, Mateus? How do you know about AZ?" His eyes were shadowed with a deep, unsettling sadness. "Because I used to work for them. I spent years trying to get out." Livia staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth. The man she had risked her marriage for was not only her husband's brother, but was connected to the very criminal enterprise that threatened to destroy her life. The plot twist was sudden and brutal, shifting the entire foundation of their relationship. Mateus wasn't just an opportunist. He was an escape artist, trapped by his own past. Livia realized that the silver bracelet he gave her was not just a romantic gesture. It might have been an attempt to reconnect with his past life, using her as a shield. The horrifying truth hit Livia with the force of a physical blow. Mateus didn't pursue her out of pure attraction. He pursued her because she was Lucas's wife, the key to getting leverage over his brother and finding a way to escape his own dangerous past. The attention, the compliments, the protective behavior, it was all a calculated strategy. Livia confronted Mateus, her voice shaking with rage and despair. "You used me. The silver, the comfort, the kiss, it was all a lie to get to Lucas and his secret." The realization was far more painful than any simple romantic betrayal. She hadn't been seen. She had been used as a pawn. Mateus didn't deny it. He met her gaze, his face etched with genuine pain, but also with fierce desperation. "I needed to know how deep Lucas was, and you were the only one close enough to find the evidence. But Livia, what I feel for you now, it's real. The danger brought us together, but the connection is true." Livia felt a terrible pull between the anger of his manipulation and the intoxicating sincerity in his eyes. He had used her, yes, but he had also saved her from remaining blind to the catastrophic danger Lucas had brought into our home. She was trapped between two betrayers. The tragic reality was that she was now fully implicated in both men's dangerous secrets. If she went to the police, she would betray Lucas and risk Mateus's life. If she stayed silent, the criminal organization would eventually come for Lucas and anyone connected to him. Mateus reached for her, his eyes pleading. "We have to run, Livia, now, before Lucas realizes the safe is empty." His use of "we" was a last-ditch effort to appeal to her heart, but Livia only heard the sound of her chains rattling.
Livia didn't trust Mateus entirely, but she knew Lucas's secret was lethal. She rushed back into the house, heading straight for the secret compartment in Lucas's desk. The safe was there, but the bank statements and the necklace were gone. Mateus's desperation had been real. Lucas had discovered the breach. Livia heard Lucas's car screech into the driveway, followed by the slam of the front door. He was home, and he knew everything. She backed away from the desk, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Lucas walked into the room, his eyes cold and terrifying, a look she had never seen before. "Where is Mateus?" Lucas's voice was low and controlled, more menacing than any shout. He didn't ask about the papers or the necklace. He went straight for the source of his betrayal. Livia knew the true danger wasn't the police. It was the fury of a cornered man. Livia stood her ground, forcing herself to be calm. "I know Mateus told me everything, Lucas, about the money, about AZ. Why did you do this to us?" She threw the question at him, hoping to use his guilt as a shield. Lucas laughed, a dry, bitter sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Mateus told you everything? That's rich. He left that necklace and those papers there because he was framing me. He's been trying to get back in with AZ for years. He knew I'd be blamed, and he knew he could take my place and my wife." Livia stared at Lucas, her mind reeling from the final, devastating plot twist.
Mateus hadn't been her protector, but a master manipulator, using their affair as a shield and an alibi for his own re-entry into the criminal world. The betrayal was complete. Both men had used her emptiness for their own dangerous games. Livia made her final, tragic choice. She looked at Lucas not with love, but with weary certainty. "I don't know who is lying, Lucas, but I'm done. I'm leaving, and I'm telling the police everything I know about the money and Mateus." It was a calculated lie, designed to protect herself and sever all ties to both men. Livia walked out of the empty house that night, leaving Lucas to face his own imminent ruin, and Mateus to face his own dangerous ambition. She didn't take the silver bracelet. She left it where it belonged, on the workbench in the garage, a silent testament to the lie that almost destroyed her. Years later, Livia was finally free, but the scars remained. She had learned the most painful lesson of all, that the greatest threat to a marriage isn't necessarily a lover, but the vacuum left by neglect. Her sanctuary was broken not by Mateus's touch, but by Lucas's apathy. The true tragedy was that she had traded one empty room for a lifetime of loneliness, finding a fleeting desire that came with a price too high to measure. The lesson was clear. If you allow yourself to become invisible, someone will eventually exploit your longing to be seen. The only thing more dangerous than a secret is the person who knows exactly how to use your pain. Remember that. Be seen, be safe.
Livia walked away from her beautiful, empty home, but the scars she carried were permanent. This whole tragedy didn't begin with a forbidden kiss or a secret bank account. It began with the silent, suffocating neglect of a marriage. Livia allowed herself to become invisible, and when that space emptied, danger entered, in the face of her husband's brother. The deepest and most painful lesson here is this: the greatest danger to your relationship isn't necessarily external temptation. It's the vacuum of connection you allow to form within you. When you stop seeing and valuing your partner, you create a void. And the universe, as Livia discovered, simply abhors a vacuum. If you watched Livia's story through to the end, you know what it's like to be ignored, to feel that silent desperation for validation. We all have moments when we feel invisible. I want to hear your side of the story. Did Livia make the right choice in the end? Have you ever felt that deep loneliness in a relationship? Leave your honest thoughts and your story in the comments below. May this be a space where we can all be truly seen. This dramatic and moving journey is far from over. There are always more secrets hidden beneath the surface of family and love. So if this story resonated with you and you want to be here for the next revelation, and believe me, the next one is even darker, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't miss the next story. Thank you for watching.